You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey everybody, Chris O'Falius here. If you're listening to this on the day it comes out, it is currently October 7th, 2021. We've just begun spooky season, and all of the episodes of Chris DeMakes a Podcast are at least somewhat Halloween themed. And we're also having a lot of fun over on the After Party podcast. For anyone who doesn't know, the After Party is our weekly podcast that we release to everyone who is part of our supporting cast program. We have a big back catalog of episodes of the After Party now, and that includes episodes about things like artists who we used to hate but now love, our first compact discs, enormous songs that we can't stand, and on and on and on. So if you'd like to check out these episodes and get a new episode every week and support Chris DeMakes a Podcast, which we hope you already love, you can head over to chrisdemakes.com and sign up for our supporting cast program. For a couple of bucks a month, you can keep us going and help us continue to get all the best guests talking about all the best songs. Okay, and we've done this a few times before, but never have we done a sneak preview of an episode of the After Party before it comes out. But that's what we're doing today. We're starting a new series with the After Party podcast called Classic Albums Revisited, in which Chris and I do a track-by-track look back at entire albums. And what better place to start than with Green Day's 1994 classic, Dookie. We're going to give you the first 15 minutes or so of this episode, and for those of you who are already part of our supporting cast, you'll be able to hear the rest of it this coming Monday, and for anyone who isn't and wants to hear the rest, all you got to do is head over to chrisdemakes.com and sign up. Okay, that's all for now. I'm going to go watch Squid Game while you guys enjoy this little sneak peek of the After Party.
Welcome to the After Party. Ready, set, let's go. Welcome to the After Party, the show after the show. Learn a little something new. Join us for the ride. Chris and Chris want all of you to know. The After Party's where it's at. The show after the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the After Party and a new special little series we have going here for the After Party. We're calling this Classic Albums Revisited.
And what better place to start for a classic album series than on February 1st, 1994, when an album was released into the world that at least partially changed the musical landscape of my life. And that was Green Day Dookie. And I'm sure a lot of people out there listening to this can say the same exact thing.
Absolutely. You know, the band, they were on pretty much every punk rocker's radar prior to this, but they hadn't broke out to the masses. And it was really cool to see their trajectory and how the band started and how they promoted themselves and what Lookout Records was doing as an independent label at that time. And, you know, Green Day was really the catalyst that, it paved the way for bands such as Offspring and Rancid later on to have the meteoric success that they had.
For sure. I had some friends that were into punk rock, a few older friends who maybe knew a little bit more than me. But I'm sure that it all stems back to Green Day one way or another, because I was thinking about this beforehand and I was like, well, I would have found out about like the Fat Records catalog from this person or, I was thinking about these other bands, but then I'm like, I was thinking about Rancid, Operation Ivy, all these kind of bands. I'm like, well, wait a second. It may have been Green Day that kind of led, me personally to go backwards, because I found out about Dookie first. I was a young kid when this came out, so I went backwards and it's like, oh, Kerplunk's awesome too. Oh, the first album's awesome too. And then it was the entire Lookout Records catalog was open to me. Not just Lookout Records, it was the entire punk rock world was open to me. And I'm sure that Green Day was at least in part responsible for that for lots and lots of people.
Absolutely. The band, I had first heard of them, it was late 1990 or early 1991. I was still in high school, and Vinny Fiorello, Less Than Jake's former drummer, he had this cassette with, actually, I believe, I take that back. I think it was like called 1039 Smoothed Out Slappy Hours. It was a 7-inch, and it had like 4 songs, 2 songs per side off that, what was the first record, 39 Smooth. And I just immediately, it was everything that I liked about punk rock coming out of the Bay Area and the Lookout record style, but there was that underlying pop sensibilities of the melodies with Billy that just made it just stand out. The music was still aggressive, but I was hooked from the time I first heard this band.
Yeah, I was too. And even listening to this album again, I mean, I still listen to this album, but maybe it's been, I don't know, may have been a year since I listened to this album. And even when I listen to it now, everything about this band, everybody brings their own thing, and it just works. Nothing is boring. Everything is so exciting, especially on this album, man. The drums, the bass cuts through so well. The melodies are amazing. The lyrics, the subject matter, just the energy. Everything about this album is just, if we're going to use pop punk as a defining genre or whatever, this is the holy grail of that, you know? And it's just three guys. That's what's so impressive to me, is three guys. And it's not like there's all these, I'm sure there's some overdubs and stuff, but for the most part, you're hearing a guitar, bass, drums, vocals. That's all there is. And it sounds so huge.
Yeah, I mean, in talking to producer Rob Cavallo, who Less Than Jake ended up working with on our Anthem record, we were just enamored with the fact that we were working with Rob to begin with. He was just a legendary producer, and I drilled him with questions about this record, which we'll get to in a little bit. But basically, he just said in a nutshell, all I wanted to do was capture what this band did live. I didn't feel like they had captured it on their first two records. They were, independent, rough punk recordings. But, fast forwarding to the second record, Kerplunk, it was interesting. As big as Lookout was, and as much as I thought that I and Vinny and other people in the punk scene, especially in Gainesville, had our pulse on what was going on, Lookout, I didn't see a thing about this record coming out. And, back in the early 90s, there was probably 3 or 4 alternative punk record stores in Gainesville. And I'm thumbing through one day and I see Kerplunk. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the new Green Day album. I was like freaking out. I went home. Vinny was still living down in my hometown of Port Charlotte. I called him. He's like, what? There's a new record? I'm like, yeah, man, I'll dub you a cassette and I'll mail it out tomorrow, which I did. And, that record, it was like, wow, there was a progression there. That was Trey's first record that he played on. And that was the first year that I saw Green Day, and it was with Trey. And it was incredible. Yeah, you can definitely tell the big step up in the recording between those two, and then obviously up to Dookie as well. But they, even from that first album, even from the 1039 Smoothed Out Slappy Hours album, the songs were already great, even with rough recording or whatever. They've always had great songs. Oh yeah, there was songs on Dookie that could have been on the first two records. That's why anyone that wanted to cry "Sell Out" at Green Day, you were missing the mark, because this band didn't change their core sound at all. No, Rob just produced the band correctly, and it sounded like a truck coming at you. That Dookie record, it still holds up today. Yeah, and I saw an interview with Billy Joe where he talked about they wanted to work with Rob Cavallo specifically when they got signed because of a Muffs recording that he had done that they loved. Yeah. Rob had done that record, and Rob's just I think a lot of producers are, but I mean, his biggest influence as a producer is the Beatles. Billy Joe loves the Beatles, and I really think that's where he kind of got past Billy's wall. Billy was, like a lot of us as young songwriters, just kind of guarded about his songwriting, and Rob told me some stories. It was tough getting them to want to listen essentially to the fourth person in a band, the producer, the fourth ingredient of saying, hey, I think this is what you should do with your songs, and that's hard as a young songwriter. It was March of '93 that Green Day rolled back through Gainesville. I saw them for the second time, and it was that night that they played they played Basket Case, When I Come Around, and Longview. So this was a full 10 months before the record was released. I remember Longview in particular that night, just that bass line. And I was like, man, this song is incredible. And Rob told me that everything about that song was the same. I think there's actually a demo on YouTube, but the very ending, the chorus was only once. And he said, chorus needs to be doubled. And Billy argued with him. And Rob basically said, come here. And he played him like a bunch of songs, I don't know, Beatles songs, different songs of how, the last chorus you kind of drive home. And Billy's kind of like, okay, I don't have a point here. And it ended up being how it was. But I remember them playing those songs. I remember When I Come Around that night. I thought it was just so cool. It reminded me of this band on Lookout at the time called Crimp Shrine, who didn't really have any vocal melody, but they would play this kind of sludgy punk rock. And When I Come Around was a different song for Green Day at that point. It was September of 93. They came back through Gainesville at a bigger venue because they were supporting Bad Religion. It was Seaweed, Green Day, and Bad Religion. And when Green Day played that night, there was probably 1,200 people in the building. It was basically their show. I mean, I love Bad Religion, but you could just feel the energy in the air. And they played Longview. Again that night. I think Basket Case and the other songs I mentioned, but Longview in particular, I remember hearing that, and I already kind of knew the song second time hearing it. That's how catchy it was.
Dude, when you listen to this album front to back, it runs you over. I noticed that there's a common thread of all the songs on this album, yet every song on this album is also its own thing. It's very interesting because it kind of sounds the same. Yeah, Longview sounds a little different, and When I Come Around sounds a little different than the rest of it. But it's also, every song stands on its own. It's amazing, like what they did, this perfect 14 and a half songs or whatever. But I wanted to go through these songs and kind of talk about each one,
Sure.
Something that stands out about these songs. And it starts with Burnout, which, dude, how awesome is it to just start, boom, vocals.
I declare I don't care no more. I'm running up and out and growing bored in my smoke-jet boring room.
I dream that I don't care no more. You're appealing to young people. I mean, not just young people. Anyone can relate to these lyrics, but that first song is just, I mean, it's a perfect first song,
Well, yeah, I mean, and I know my band took a page out of that book with kind of self-deprecating lyrics, almost that could fit in with what was happening in the alternative grunge scene at the time. That lyric you just laid out, but yet it was sung over this poppy music. It's like, wait a second, there's this dark, angsty lyric that all these teenagers around the world are going to immediately gravitate to and get, but there's this poppy music behind it. It's not dirgy. It's not grungy. It's not, minor chords. It's poppy. It's upbeat, major.
And that is a common theme on this album, is these dark lyrics. It's, I'm not growing up. I'm just burning out, and I stand in line to walk amongst the dead, which, if you sang that in a grunge song, it could sound like some dark shit. But in this song, it's just such an upbeat, uplifting song musically, paired with such dark lyrics. I mean, this had to be an influence of like Alkaline Trio, it's kind of the same sort of thing. And so I just think Burnout's such a great first song, and Trey gets to show off in the first song.
Yeah, and he was just such a great force, and still is in this band. Just the drumming on the first record with John Kiffmeyer, great drumming, and it's interesting. Kind of feels like Trey has a lot of the same movements and sound, and Trey was able to keep the Green Day sound but make it his own. That little drum solo he does in Burnout, it's amazing. I can hear Keith Moon in there, just the reckless abandon of the drumming. I know the Who Trey is a huge Who fan, but what that part reminded me of from the very first time I heard it, Chris, I don't know if you've ever heard of this song. It's the first track. Back in 1978, Kiss did 4 solo records. Each band member put a solo record out. They all flopped except for Ace Frehley's. And Ace's record, the first song on the record is called Rip It Out. And there's a drum part in the middle of that song, bridge part, that's very reminiscent of Burnout. Anton Fig plays the drums. And Anton was a famous session player. I believe played with David Letterman's band. And the first time I heard him, like, wow, he definitely heard Rip It Out.
That's awesome. I mean, I think Trey, his band is enormous, so it's hard to say that someone's underrated. But I don't hear people talk about Trey in these, like, who's the best drummer conversations. Everyone's talking about Travis and Josh Freese and everybody, but I think Trey, you can make a pretty good argument for him. He's very unique. It's like the same argument I make for Ringo, is like people sometimes don't want to talk about Ringo, but his parts are so unique and almost singable.
I have one word for Trey Cool: solid.
Yeah.
I mean, and just solid all around. I've seen him live. The groove is just there. The guy's flawless. And you're right. I think he should be mentioned in those circles of the Travis Barkers and Josh Freese. I think he's that good.
As we move to the second song of the album, it's Having a Blast. And when I listen to this song, the first thing I'm thinking is, which I've never thought about before today, is, wow, could you write this song now and get away with it? It's like a lot about, like, no one here is getting out alive. I wouldn't take anything away from that, and I'm sure that's not what they meant, but I could see these lyrics of this song getting extra scrutinized if it came out today when you look at it. I hope you all enjoyed that little sneak peek of the after party. Like I said, this whole episode will be released on Monday, October 11th, 2021. So if you're part of our supporting cast, you can check it out then. If you're not, head over to ChrisDeMakes.com and sign up. Not only will you hear this episode and all upcoming episodes, but you also get an entire back catalog of great pods. Not to mention, you'll be keeping the lights on over here at Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Thanks, everybody. Hell yeah. Each week on the One Hit Thunder podcast, we welcome a special guest to come take a deep dive into a one-hit wonder artist with us. And together, we decide if that artist brought the One Hit Thunder or was nothing more than a one-hit blunder. You can find One Hit Thunder anywhere that you listen to podcasts, so hit that subscribe button and join in on the fun each week.
What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty, host of the Punk Rock NBA podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. My podcast is all about doing what you love for a living, and every week I sit down and talk to people who have done exactly that. For example, musicians like Tommy from Between the Buried and Me, Matt from Periphery, Lil Lotus and Shinigami, among many others, photographers, artists, designers, YouTubers like Glenn Fricker and Sarah Dici, and I unpack exactly how they got to where they are today with the goal of helping you do the same. So if that sounds cool, you can listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com, and I'll see you there.